We'd like to welcome you all to the Sandwiching and History Tour of the William E. Woodruff House. It's a pleasure to see so many of you here today, and there are quite a few people here today. The Quapaw Quarter Association made this tour possible, so we'd like to thank them for everything that they've done to give us this opportunity. I'd also personally like to acknowledge Patricia Blake, who she is the director of QQA, who helped me a great deal in preparing for this tour. She also is taking some time away from a family trip to be here and open it up for you guys. So thank you, Patricia. Sure, you can clap. Without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. This house and the area surrounding it were once part of the estate of William Edward Woodruff, an integral figure in the development of Little Rock and Arkansas itself. Woodruff was born in Long Island, New York in 1795 and spent his early years there as the oldest of 5 brothers. His father died when he was around 12 years old, so William soon had to begin learning a trade. When he was 14, his mother secured him an apprenticeship with a printer from Sag Harbor, New York, named Alden Spooner. Here it is. I'm going to have to move this out just a little bit. All right. There we go. Okay. So, where was I? His apprenticeship ended in 1816, and he began his printing career in New York as a journeyman. In 1818, he had ventured out to Kentucky. He ventured out to Kentucky and then to Tennessee, briefly working for the Clarion and Tennessee State Gazette. Once Arkansas Territory was created in 1819, Woodruff bought some printing materials and moved to Arkansas Post. It was there that he published the first Arkansas Gazette in November of 1819, and he continued his work there until November of 1821, when Little Rock became the capital of Arkansas Territory. Woodruff promptly moved to Little Rock, which at the time was not yet a legitimate city. He began publishing the Gazette there in December of 1821. Woodruff truly originated the publication business in Arkansas. His Gazette was not only the first newspaper in Arkansas, but it essentially was the entire press in Arkansas for almost a decade since he moved to Little Rock. He also produced the first book to be printed in Arkansas called The Laws of the Territory of Arkansas. For the next 3 decades, after 1821, in Little Rock, Woodruff established himself as an imposing presence in the city. After printing from a modest log cabin for 2 years, he moved the offices of the Gazette in 1824 to a small brick building at the corner of what's now 2nd and Cumberland. A few months before his marriage to Jane Eliza Mills in 1827, he moved the offices again to a larger brick building that he had built near the corner of Markham and Scott Streets. For a time, that building served as both a publishing office and a residence for Woodruff's family and employees. All of Woodruff's 11 children were born in that house between 1828 and 1850. Apparently, a couple of them even died there in their younger years. During this nearly 3 decades in that house is when Woodruff developed his great influence throughout the city and the state. In publishing and in practice, he became active in local and state politics. The Gazette itself was founded as a Democratic paper and regularly criticized political adversaries. Woodruff also fostered a beneficial relationship with Chester Ashley, a landowner and attorney who was certainly one of the most influential people in Arkansas during the time and in Arkansas history in general. Woodruff also at times held minor offices, including being the first Arkansas state treasurer in 1836. His ventures outside the printing business contributed to his esteem in Little Rock. He established the first library in Arkansas in 1843 and kept multiple businesses, including a land agency he started in 1823. So essentially, he built all of his clout while he was in the house downtown. But it should be noted that he's still best known for being the founder of the Gazette, which he only really controlled fully during his early years in Little Rock. He initially sold the paper in 1838 and sporadically regained control of it through various means until he sold it for the final time in March of 1853, the same month that Woodruff and his family moved into this home. By the time Woodruff began building this house in spring of 1852, downtown Little Rock had grown into a busy city, which in Woodruff's own words, had all the amusements and recreations of an old and settled community. At the time, this location was far enough, this location here where we're standing, was far enough outside the city to hold a farmstead, yet close enough for Woodruff to stay involved in the affairs of Little Rock. The original plot of land he purchased was around 25 acres, bordered by 7th Street to the north, College Street to the east, 9th Street to the south, and Rector to the west. The house was built originally facing south toward 9th Street, so this entrance right here was actually, it was moved from the south entrance. The primary builder was a prominent brick mason of Little Rock named John Robbins, who used local materials and had bricks made on site. So the home was built in a Greek Revival style, complete with a portico and columns on the front entrance, which again was originally on the south facade. Adding to the prestige of the home was a circular carriage drive in the large front lawn and a curving walnut staircase inside that accessed all 3 floors. The original plan of the building included 10 rooms with 2 central hallways, one on the first floor and one on the second floor. The 4 large rooms on the bottom floor, each one had a fireplace and were used as double parlors, a library, and a temporary dining room. Shortly after the Woodruffs moved in, an addition was built on the northwest corner of the house, which extended north. So it was on this corner of the house and extended out this way. This provided a proper dining area with a kitchen and pantry. The family bedrooms were all upstairs. Every room had a fireplace, and the house had at least 4 chimneys on each corner of the house. Woodruff spent around $9,000 total on the construction. The grounds of the home held all the things consistent with a small farmstead. So if you can imagine, this is what Patricia told me, and it worked. But if you can imagine, essentially all of this area out here sort of being forestry. And the areas immediately surrounding in sort of a 25-acre radius was, farmland, essentially. An orchard was planted to the west of the front lawn, and a garden was planted to the east of the house just out here. Livestock grounds, including a barn, stables, pig pens, chicken yards, and a tool shed, were all located on the north garden over here. Slave quarters were also present to the north of the house. Woodruff was indeed a slaveholder and a supporter of the Confederacy. By 1860, he held 14 slaves on his property. After Arkansas seceded in May of 1861, Woodruff's support led him to volunteer for the Confederate Army at the age of 65. After having fought in Missouri, he returned home where he would try to defend Little Rock from an enclosing Union force. By September of 1863, though, Union troops controlled the city. In 1864, Union General Frederick Steele banished Woodruff from Little Rock due to his sympathies. Steele then seized Woodruff's estate, using it as a headquarters and a temporary military hospital. So this was Union headquarters and a military hospital for about a year during the war. When the war ended, however, Woodruff and his family moved back into the house. In June of 1873, Woodruff divided his 25 acres into lots for the city of Little Rock, and he and Jane continued to live in this house. Throughout Reconstruction and until his death, Woodruff continued to have a hand in Little Rock politics. His son bought the Gazette in the summer of 1866, and Woodruff himself undoubtedly had an influence in its publication. He helped negotiate debates in the state legislature and even provided arms for Elisha Baxter in his violent struggle to retain the governorship. He also strongly opposed suffrage for newly free African Americans, and it was reflected in the pages of the Gazette. William Woodruff died on June 19, 1885, and was buried at Mount Holly Cemetery. Jane Eliza Woodruff died in 1887, but the house remained in the family under the care of their son Alden until 1891, when it was sold. During the 1890s, the interior was modernized, and many decorative features were renovated, including the staircases and some of the fireplace mantels. The new owners completed the current north-facing configuration that many of us are standing in, around 1900, eliminating the south portico and enclosing the door space with 3 wood frame windows on the back. I read also that the columns, I believe, are the original columns that were, are believed to be the original columns that were on the back. Let me see. Within the first few years of the new century, the L extension that was on the northwest corner was removed. A large semicircular porch and balustrade were constructed around the new double-door north entrance, as well as a gabled dormer with arched windows. You can still see the gabled dormer. The semicircular balustrade was done away with. By the early 1920s, the semicircular porch had been replaced by the rectangular porch that exists today. The interior of the home was redesigned as a multiple residence space and specifically served to lodge single young women who came to Little Rock for work. It was called the Cottage Home for Girls, and it was divided into 12 bedrooms, each of which could house multiple residents. Women who lived there were charged around $5 per week, which included 2 hot meals every day. The home served the same purpose throughout the 1930s, but the name was changed to the Colonial Club for Business Girls. The building continued to serve as a family-owned boarding house until around 1980. It was owned and kept by Callie Talley and her husband, great name. During their time as owners, the building had 12 apartments, 4 units on each floor. The walls were covered in wallpaper, which if you go in and check out some of the bedroom walls, that wallpaper is still visible, although in a much more deteriorated state, I would assume. The walls were covered in wallpaper, and the central hall was covered with wood paneling, as I guess everything was in the 1960s. Beginning in the 1980s, John Carrollson purchased the house, and it became Carrollson Manor Apartments. Carrollson purchased the building directly to the east of the house in 1987. There was a longer building to the east right here, after it was condemned by the city, and he made plans to save it and turn it into an extension of Carrollson Manor with 6 new units, but ultimately the building was demolished. In the late 1990s, all but one of the chimneys were removed after sustaining damage during a storm. Until 2005, the Woodruff House continued to be used as an apartment building with 14 units available. In 2005, a room on the first floor of the south side caught fire, and the house has since been vacant, although the essential structure is still intact, and you can still see a lot of the burn scarring from that on the far room on the south side. Since the house was vacated in 2005, it sustained almost a decade of natural and man-made degradation. Though efforts have already been made to secure the integrity of the building, many of you were asking me about that beforehand. Many historic window panes were broken out, which has allowed water damage to occur. More damage has occurred due to the deteriorated state of the dormer addition on the north side here. Copper pipes, bathroom fixtures, and even historic mantelpieces were all stolen at various points. The unwanted materials, unwanted by the vandals that is, were often scattered around the house. So the need to preserve or repurpose the Woodruff House is really derived from the antebellum nature of the house and many of its features. As you tour the building today, you might want to pay attention to the original 1850s elements. There are a few still visible and existing. This includes some of the bedroom fireplace mantles, the plaster walls and baseboards inside of some of the apartment closets. They're very narrow closets, but the walls and baseboards inside the closets are still the originals, and even the pilasters on the south facade that are visible in the house that were part of the original entryway. The most recent history of the building has been focused in this need to preserve. In 2008, WER Architects inspected the house and composed a condition assessment report, which detailed how best to support the structure and save the house. So that led to, in 2013, the Quapaw Quarter Association, the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, Preserve Arkansas, and the City of Little Rock all formed a consortium to determine how to fund the effort to save the house. Ultimately, in 2014, the QQA, or Quapaw Quarter Association, purchased the structure and about 14,000 square feet of land surrounding it. In 2015, the City of Little Rock put up the chain link fence that you see here and boarded up all the openings, the windows and doors that were broken out in order to further secure the house. In 2016, AHPP granted over $72,000 to the city of Little Rock for selective demolition and stabilization projects. Finally, in 2016, QQA replaced the roof and provided for some structural stabilization. The Woodruff House has been listed on the National Register of Historic Places since March 21st, 1989, but it has endured some intense deterioration. However, the recent efforts have revitalized hope for preserving the structure and, in effect, its historical value. Again, we want to thank you all so much for attending the July tour of the William Woodruff House. As you tour today, you can venture around the home or brave the interior, as many of you have already done. Patricia asked me to ask all of you if you would maybe go inside in shifts. There's not too much space. There's a lot of creaking and stuff like that. It's secure, but it's just for the sake of maybe heat or overcrowding. You may want to take shifts. So there's also water available over here on the side and some coolers, which was also provided by QQA, so thank you. There are some taped off areas in here, just taped off with masking tape. We'd ask you to not cross those, so thank you.